Welcome to the third episode in the series of Whole of Community Change, featuring Annalise Jennings, Director of Dynamic Exchange, Maryann Coconut, Elder and Representative for the Napranum Aboriginal Shire Council, Angie Liu, a Senior Sports Recreation Officer, and Dicky Namai, Supervisor of the Napranum Housing Unit. Annalise Jennings, as the Director of Dynamic Exchange, has over 25 years' experience in senior roles in financial services and other sectors, including property and small business. She's an experienced facilitator and has led business transformation in project management in large organizations and has an extensive background in risk management and organizational culture. This experience has been gained through working in India, Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. She has spoken on transformation and maximizing human potential in a variety of business and community forums, and she's passionate about teams and helping them discover healthy working relationships and celebrating success and empowerment. Jennings balances her time between key corporate engagements, her part-time career as an alternative health practitioner, and has always combined her working life with parenting and study. She strongly believes in human potential and is a passionate advocate of ethical corporate and individual behaviour in the business community. As Councillor of the Napranum Aboriginal community, Maryann Coconut's responsibilities include education and social services. She believes education is essential to community progress, and she has led the way in completing a bachelor's in community management. She was recently quoted, "We, the people, are the caretakers of this land, given to us by the Creator Spirit, who is the Creator. We acknowledge him with adoration and thanksgiving. We, the elders, are the gatekeepers, and this is an age-old role given to us by our ancestors. Our knowledge and wisdom of our country is still strong, and will remain invisible and well guarded in our spirit till we die. Our spirit will pass this knowledge on to the next elder in line." Dicky Namai is a qualified carpenter, tradesman and supervisor of the Napranum Housing Unit, and he's participated in the Napranum Leaders Collaboration Programme when the community's blueprint was first created in November 2011. He's also participated in the Men of Worth programme and is married to Ramona and a father of 3 boys. And Angela Liu is a Senior Sports and Recreation Officer and President of the Napranum Events Committee. She's also the President of the Seniors Rugby League Club and has a passion for community development, socio-economic development and self-worth for community people. She also strives to build capacity in personal behaviour. Featuring in Episode 3 of Whole of Community Change, Annalise Jennings, Maryann Coconut, Dicky Namai, and Angie Liu, are DG Networks a member of Universal One Broadcasting. Welcome back to the long-term series Whole of Community Change at DG Networks, a Universal One Broadcasting member, Episode 3 in the series, and a pleasure to be talking to Annalise Jennings, Maryann Coconut, Dicky Namai, and Angela Louis. And I shall start with yourself, Annalise. Welcome back. Such a pleasure once again.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here.
And Maryann Coconut. Maryann, welcome to you.
It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you.
And Dicky Namai, a great pleasure to welcome you for the first time to the series.
Yes, good to be here, David.
And Angela Louis, Angela, the same. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for allowing me to be here.
I'd like to begin with yourself, Annalise. A brief review, maybe your thoughts today about how the program has progressed, what is happening in your world as we begin this journey today?
Well, it was only this afternoon that I met with two traditional owners in the community, and they were very much involved in the initial stages of whole of community change back in November 2011. And they shared with me the progress that they're seeing, the improved infrastructure, the increase in employment around the community, that there's a different buzz, there's a different energy around the community. So it was hugely valuable, satisfying, I guess fulfilling to sit in their company and to hear their thoughts and what they've seen shift over the last couple of years.
Thank you, Annalise, and much of which we'll be talking about today. And Maryann Coconut, Maryann, your initial thoughts as we begin the journey today, if you may?
Well, we had strategic planning with Annalise, and it was a joy to sit with other members of the WECA to plan about the future of WECA. It was exciting to be with other people of other communities in the Western Cape York Peninsula.
Thank you, Maryann. And first time on the series, Dicky Namai. Dicky, welcome to you once again. And your background, if you would, for our listeners today, where you are at in your life and your livelihood, and how your perception and your perspective of your community is for you.
Well, like Annalise said, there's definitely a transition happening in the community towards change, and a lot of infrastructure coming into the community, positive attitude from the people, increased employment. I'm doing well myself. I'm now a tradesman and working at the civic centre that's being constructed at the moment. And just it's a real joy to see the community, the way it's progressing at the moment. Yeah, just really positive, and it will continue because everyone's determined to follow through with the change that's happening.
Before I leave you, Dicky, you mentioned the word infrastructure. This came up in a previous program. Great interest to everybody, because it's not a word that we would immediately associate with communities such as Napranum. Can you just describe the infrastructure today versus an infrastructure that perhaps may have been evident 2 or 3 years ago? What are the principal parts of that?
There's a supermarket in Napranum now that's open for trade. It's been for a couple of months now, and we had an official opening then, and the community got together and partook of the situation. It was a very successful event. And also the housing that I'm a part of, building the houses to help accommodate the local people and solve this chronic housing issue in remote areas. Also the takeaway, that's been good. Also we're working on the cabin park that's facilitating, accommodating staff that are working in the construction team. And compared to before, yeah, it's a lot different, a lot more modern. It looks really good, like the new office chamber in the civic centre. It's all fitted out as you'd see an office down south, and we're doing all that type of work.
Thank you, Dicky. I appreciate that. Let me move on to Angela Louis. Angela, you're, among many things, I believe, the president of the Napranum Events Committee, and you are greatly interested in sports and the well-being of people around you. A brief overview, a brief background of yourself, if you may.
I've been in Napranum, or working with Napranum, for the last, I always say 11 years. I never get on from 11 years, but I think it's been about 13 years now that I've been up here. And I've actually originally came to Weipa to look for my grandfather, because he moved up here a few years ago before I came, and I was here to seek him out. So I accidentally got dropped off in Napranum in front of a house, and was told to look for a house with many plants, and I would find him, and if I didn't find him at home, he'd be down at the beach fishing. So from that point onwards, I wasn't turning back. I was here to stay. And what I've experienced is that in all my experiences, I've sort of been thrown in head first and trying to come up for air in all sorts of areas, and where I've worked in retail and hospitality. And I came up here, and overnight I sat up and did a community development plan, and I knew nothing about community because I grew up in the suburban areas around Cairns, Innisfail, Townsville, Chillagoe, and you name it, been everywhere from a small girl. And coming into Napranum, that back then there was a lot of things that needed to be done, and I had no background whatsoever, but I could see where things needed to be, because I came from the mainstream environment into a community environment. And with my housing background, in a 10-year plan, we were looking at about 20 houses in the next 10 years, and I think they've almost doubled that since my time in housing. And from housing, I went through to child and family support in community, in the social areas of community. I then went to child safety, youth justice, work within community. I was a part of the mediation between the community people and the bodies that were stakeholders that were involved in bringing the Safe House together for community. So there's been a big change in that area. Back then, a lot of people were driving around, and they were a part of their community, but then there was like a blanket over the community. In the last couple of years, since we've gone through the changes, now it's like the blanket's been lifted and there's a new light on community, and there's just so much happening. I had a nurse pull me up the other day at the hospital, and she said, she drove into the community at 6 o'clock in the morning, and she said, you know what, there's ladies and there's people walking around with shoes and exercising, which has never been done before. And everyone feels so proud about their community, their new store, and there's a purpose there, and it's so good to see. So I've sort of come a long way with community, and this community have taught me a lot about culture and history, and something that when growing up in mainstream I never knew much about, and coming here I've learnt and been a part of these people, so I'm very grateful for being a part of them. I've also an in-law to the traditional owners up here through my grandfather, so it took me a little while to settle in, but yeah, I'm very comfortable, and people are comfortable with me, I hope. It's been a big journey.
Thank you very much for that, and I'm going to come back to you because there's many points there, and for Annalise and Maryann I have some points to expand upon, particularly the Safe House and the mediation with stakeholders. However, before we go to that, I have defined this section of the program as cohesion, collective spirit. I did not add to that on the narrative document collective decision making. So I'm going to add that now, if I may. And with all of that, let me start with yourself, Dicky. Your observations of the community. Angela there talked about family life, talked about supporting youth justice schemes, the Safe House, child and family values. You have a family. How do you observe, how do you witness what is taking place in Napranum today after the last 2 years of this whole of community change plan that has manifested itself?
Well, you can see it in the attitude of the men when they turn up to work in the mornings, and through conversation that they want to change, that they want to be a better father, better person. And you can see the reflection of that change in the family, in the faces of the wives and the kids. And there's a lot more interaction between the father and the kids, the mothers, as well as a family unit. I think that's the most important thing, because for me, when I go to work, I know that my partner at home is understanding of my purpose in the community, what the purpose of, and she has an understanding of why I go to work and why it is important for these houses in the community. Why is it important? Then I come home and she takes care of everything at home, and then I can come home and just ease in and be a father and play my duties at home as a responsible father and looking after the kids and herself. Any opportunity I get to speak to the men at work, opportunity arises, we all discuss stuff like that. It really building building the relationship between me and the men at work, and then a ripple effect goes out from the men into their families and so forth.
Thank you for that. A powerful statement made there. And we're going to, towards the end of the program today, talk to the Men's Healing Program introduced by Annalise. Let me turn to you, if I may, Annalise, on that. The statements you're hearing here, this is a cohesiveness that is wrong or right on my part, Annalise. Seems like a huge paradigm shift for this Indigenous community, the housing, the coming together, the understanding, the disciplines of work. This is a very profound story that's taking place here. Your thoughts to that?
The change is not only in real terms, but it's also the community perception that things are shifting, and that's what I believe is really important, because that mindset shift is paramount. There's been a perception that Indigenous communities don't have an economy, but I believe that there's huge economy, huge potential and huge scope, and we've only just started to tip the iceberg there. So I believe, let's see us transition more and more services such as home maintenance now into the community. It really it impacts me to hear Dicky talk about the family values in particular, and to talk about his wife being really aware of his purpose and his contribution in the community, and also for him to be aware of hers. And why that is so impactful is that the whole of community change is all about starting with those age-old questions of who am I? What am I here for? What's deeply meaningful to me? What is it that we are here to create together? And so in every program, in every workshop, when participants come together, it is all about those questions and getting really, really clear about who we are and what we stand for. So when we remember who we are, we bring our authentic selves forward. And sometimes that can be difficult, because at times at an early age, that's often, forced out of us to try to hide our true selves. But every day we choose anew who we are and how we support that authentic self. And I believe that's what Dicky is really bringing to the table today. And then that ripple effect, how that then manifests itself in people turning up to work, that they take responsibility, they take accountability. And so we're seeing business flourish inside the community. So therefore, in all of that, we're seeing a shift from welfare dependency towards true community ownership and revenue-making enterprise.
Immediately turn to Angela. Angela, you talk about your grandfather. Quick point. First of all, was that the first time you had met him, seen him? And what were your thoughts when you first met him? Because there was a remarkable amount of energy and history to talk about in that. And secondly, listening to Dicky talk about the infrastructure of Napranum, talk about the values, the home values, the family values, and then Annalise provide this umbrella set of thoughts about this evolution. Where are you with all of that? How do you see this, and what is your integral role that you see yourself playing now? You've already discussed it in your opening statement, but could you expand upon that, having listened to the other responses?
The role I see in community, it took a long time for me to actually get in to say, well, I can do this and I can do that, because you've got to be careful as an outsider to come into community that you don't step on people's toes and they don't think that you've come here to take over something. And what I've learned is, and this is at the cultural part of it, is that you never speak up on behalf of someone else or behalf of their land or anything like that. So I learned a lot of cultural law and roles and responsibilities that I needed to abide by. And that didn't happen overnight. That happened over quite a long period of time. And my role, I see, is that I'm not here to say that I can do this and I can do that. My role is here to say that, come, let's do it together, and let's share our knowledge, and let's build on that. And that way you build a better relationship with the people. I'm often being the buffer zone between organisations and people that come from outside. Often the elders will come and say, or pull me up and say, oh, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that. Can you help us to understand that, and can you try and break it down? So I've been that part of that role. I respect the people in the community to always ask permission for them before, especially when services want to come in and do things in community. Sometimes they might come in and carry on something, but I feel that I need to be there to answer the people of the community's questions and answers before I can say it's okay for anyone to come in. The cultural part of the understanding of these people has given me a broader knowledge to where I am, where I come from, and where I'm going to in my life as well. I was on a journey before I came through, and my grandfather moved from down south up to the Napranum area quite some time ago. So I lost a little bit of knowledge because my mum died, especially cultural knowledge and family history and stuff that I was seeking. But when I came up here, like I was on my own journey, and I picked up from here, that gave me a broader understanding of his part and his role that he plays in the family environment of the people of this land. So from my previous experience, there's been lots and lots of hurdles out there before I came here, and I was actually able to sort of get here and hit the ground running and pick up what I needed along the way to keep me going to where I am today.
And Maryann, listening to this, I view this as a paradigm shift. But when you listen to Angela and Dicky, and they're talking about family values, Angela talks about taking quite possibly a very profound journey in her life. They are now in Napranum and building, co-creating this community. We had talked before about remembering. This is a time of remembering. Is it a paradigm shift, Maryann? Is it something new, or is it beginning to remember how it could have been in ancient times, could have been before? It's just that we forgot. Are we beginning to remember now and put all of this into action in Napranum, in all of these pursuits of family values and building a community?
Yes, it has always been the priority to have family affairs, because with the senior elders, that's where the knowledge comes from. And as we go along each day, we remember what we were told when we were little children round the campfire, the stories that our grandparents told us about, the discipline that they talk about, that you must obey elderly people, that you must do what the elderly people want you to do, and you won't get into trouble with the law, because there were stricter laws in those ancient times. But now things have changed, and we know now with social issues, we talk about the Western world's justice, of how to deal with social justice. As Angela was saying, we do have training for mediations, so it's no more that disputes get out of hand, that we'll have a mediation straight away when there's family feuding in the community. And so we know that now there has been a shift with social issues, and that it's really great that we can deal with those social issues with our young people and the people in the community to make things right with the family, with the community. And we can see the energy there, that we work together with the police and with the law, because with all the infrastructure and the change in the community, we believe that our community has to be a law-abiding community to respect the law.
Annalise, very quickly before I move on to Dicky, perhaps this is out of context, I don't think so, but listening to this, is Maryann, Dicky and Angela talking perhaps to language in seeing the difference between legitimacy and legality? Is that something that Napranum is now creating, that sees the legalities as something that is going to shape itself, needs to be questioned, needs to be crafted, whereas legitimacy in an Indigenous community is highly spiritual, very aligned? Big difference between those two constructs, is there not?
There is, and the way that I would language that in my own mind is that, and Angie talked about this also, where services often come in and do things for us. And so, I believe that, yes, there has to be a law-abiding community, but I also believe that what whole of community change seeks to achieve is a shift from paternalism, control, intervention and penalty and punishment to respect, to respecting the wisdom of the elders, respecting the wisdom of the collective, to true community ownership and self-determination. And so I believe that's a big part of this discussion here. And so where we have those core family values, that seems to be a real theme here today, around respecting our elders, around pulling together those beliefs and family values that have that keep us connected. And I actually believe that that is something that has connected me to this community, the family values that my parents taught me. So when I hear communities talk about family values, it fits for me. I understand it. It's a language that I'm really, really comfortable with, and it has to come from there. So yes, law-abiding community, absolutely, but let's continue to see that shift away from paternalism, punishment and control to true community ownership and self-determination.
And thank you for that, Annalise. And indeed, I believe that David Kempton talked to paternalism. That was ranking high on his list of areas of discussion. Yes, we've been talking about family values, respect, history, remembering, I think is very important, as discussed with Maryann. Let me just shift it a bit, because now I'm going to take it to behavior, human relations. It's all in the same area. And that takes me back to Dicky. Dicky, you are a qualified carpenter. What a wonderful trade to be in. And you are part of the housing development, hugely important for the community. It creates the neighborhoods, the energy, the culture. What are your observations in that domain? What are your observations on a daily basis as you build houses, as you work with your colleagues to build houses and see neighborhoods build out into the sky and expand the community? How do you view that when you're working?
Well, we're building houses in the new subdivision in Napranum. There's all new houses surrounding us, where we were building houses earlier on this year, and the next set of houses that we're going to build again. So we're surrounded by people who have just moved into their new house. And the thing with family is that you got to have a home where you feel comfortable and loved and accepted, protected. And you can see that when people move into these houses, you see the joy on their face. Yes, this is a place that I can call home now. I can make a home for my family. And it's a joy for us men to be there building these houses, knowing that we will provide some family with a home. And that's where I find my satisfaction, in that I can provide a family with a home, because prior to that, them moving into a new home, they've probably stayed at families and other families' houses and haven't really had the freedom to be their own family and apply their lifestyle the way they raise their kids, and too many different influences and probably disagreements, etc. But raise a family, you must have a home, and that's the important thing that I see that we're doing, is providing a home for the local people.
To me, this paints a slightly different picture, a beautiful picture, of your energy that's being transmitted here, because I ask you what it is to be a carpenter and to build homes, but I feel that you're thinking in that process of building these homes and working with your colleagues, not just to that material form that you're creating, but also the family values, the conversations, the meals around the kitchen table, the laughter and the love. Are these all thoughts that go through your mind as you're building these homes, much more expanded than just being the tradesman, but being something much more?
Yes, and that's how I perceive it. Is for myself, I can go at the end of the day, I go home and I have my place, my own home. And some of these families, they have to share accommodation with other families, and they cannot enjoy that comfort of having their own home. So once they move in and have that freedom of and ownership of their own home, and that's where that peace and contentment comes in, that they're happy now. This is where home is.
And so, Angela, you are specifically interested, among many of your areas, in socioeconomics, how the community creates a sustainability. You're very interested in human behavior, in human relations. How do you see this? How do you see what Dicky is doing here with housing? How do you feel that creates this human behavior that eliminates the need for safe houses, eliminates or certainly diffuses the role of social services? How do you view all of that?
In the past, as like being housing officer for the community, there was a great need to deliver more housing stock in the community, because families would come in and they think that you're carrying Legos in your pockets and you could just build them a house like that, because we've had like 10 to 15 people living in one home, and that caused a lot of social and emotional issues, raising children. Individual young families were unable to be themselves because they had to be a part of everyone. That's one scenario. And the other one is that in my role as the coordinator for the Community PCYC Centre, where we deliver sports and recreational program, when they delivered the 20 new houses down at the new subdivision, there was a drop in attendance at the centre, and it was highly due to the families and the children especially enjoying that they have their own home. And it sort of the significant drop. And when you talk to families and people in community, is that they were so proud of having their own space, their own home, something that they could work with. And that, to me, I didn't care whether no one came up to the centre to do any sports and rec at that time, because I was happy for them to actually enjoy what they had that was theirs. Also, that when we do arts and crafts out of our program, a lot of the children and the young parents and the elders that had come, we'd work on things like wall hangings and basket of flowers and things that could go in and beautify their homes, which is a big shift to what was happening 8 years ago. And specifically in the last 2 years, the change in people's respect for themselves. Everyone's talking about new houses and they can have that, and we've got our store, and we need to be, now we want markets and we want this, and they want so much now. And before, I felt that there wasn't enough energy there within themselves. And once you give them and help them to build capacity within themselves, they take it. And they're such a proud group of people that I've met, been privileged to know and grow up with here.
I shall come back to you on the socioeconomics in a while, if I may, Angela. Maryann may not have this perfectly accurate, but it seems in the way that Angela talks to that cohesion, that there is a strong intergenerational cohesion, not just youths or middle-aged or elders, but it sounds as if in this whole process of building houses, creating a community there, that you're creating this intergenerational spirit. Would that be accurate?
Yes, because we see that when the families move into the new houses, straight away they want to water the lawn and make sure it's green. They start to put plants because they're happy to have a home of their own. And I think that's the shift in the community with the adults and the children. What they see is happening. Like we say, the ripple effects go right through the community with the energy that sweeps through the community with children, parents, and adults, and senior elders.
Just a thought there, Maryann, is it usual, looking back at the Navajos and the Hopis in the southwest of the USA, I noticed that there was a great cohesion in family life where under the same roof you would have the grandparent, elder, the parents, and in many cases this is, and also the grandchildren. Is that typical of an indigenous community? Is that something that occurs in Napranum, that you have this cohesion as well of all the generations living within the same house so that they can learn from the elders in that situation?
Yes, but now that people have their own homes, they live in their own homes. But when we have family gatherings, celebrations, birthday parties, Christmas time coming together, that's where all the families come together, enjoy their time together as a family, sharing the time together, laughter, having a meal together, and singing and dancing. And it's a happy time that you see families coming together, even if they are living in their own homes, but they can arrange to come together and celebrate together in a family's home.
And Annalise, this seems to be a huge area here that we're coming across, not only talking to family values, respect, human behavior, cohesion between generations, but it seems almost that housing is a very strong part of that infrastructure that's not just houses. It's more about bringing families together and creating perhaps what was lost in the decades after the war, where you had this dysfunction, this dismantling of family values. It seems that Napranum is rebuilding that. Is that a sensible statement?
Absolutely. The housing project is an example that we're seeing in the community around true community ownership. So this is the structure of belonging. So if something belongs to me, then I've had a part in its co-creation. If I've had a part in its co-creation, then I'm going to nurture it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to take accountability for it. I'm going to water the lawns. I'm going to be with my family, to gather my family, because there's a sense of community pride. And as I'm saying this, I'm smiling, and the others are all smiling as well, because this is the structure of community, and we're actually seeing it coming to life. And so what we're seeing here is a reciprocal energy of giving and receiving, of families coming together, and a real knowing that if that energy exists within us, then it can exist within us and between us and the people that we engage with, and then out to the environment, out to humanity, out to community. And so the housing project is like a hub. It's a beginning of so much more to come.
Annalise, let me just stay with you and ask you, because I'm going to, in a moment, ask Angela about her thoughts on socioeconomics as it applies to Napranum, this small community. But when you look at socioeconomics, how does that play out in Napranum? How do you use that term to define and create the infrastructure that is clearly proving to be housing as a major part of that? But what is socioeconomics, and how do you apply that term to what you're doing in Napranum?
Well, one example of how I would apply it is if we look at the overcrowding that has existed in Napranum in the past. and we can see a direct link between that overcrowding and the negative social indicators that have existed in the community. We've now seen a shift in those negative social indicators. We've seen 50% reduction in adult court appearances. We're seeing no children in the safe house anymore, as an indication that parents are actually looking after their kids. So if we use that as an example, we're seeing huge shifts, again using housing as an example of how to create a new social fabric in the community.
Angela, your thoughts about Annalise's statement, socioeconomics, about the wider area of looking at the prior negative indicators, the overcrowding, the fact that you do not have any children in the safe houses anymore. What is that socioeconomics to you in a practice, in the way that you practice it in a plan?
Going back into what was happening in community before, where there was that need for the safe house, there was that need for the service that I was working for, which was Act for Kids, Youth Opportunity Program, where clients, being in control of around about 11 clients who were young offenders in community, and keeping them out of the youth justice system, the background into their environments that made them into the people that they were triggers to identify that it wasn't the person themselves, it was the environment that they were living in. Since the change with the alcohol management program that's in the community, there's been a big shift in that, because then you could actually have the chance to actually deal with the basic needs of those young people, deal with their basic needs, and then look at the family dynamics as to what was actually happening. And working with them through that was helped to actually get them out. I think till today, out of those 11 clients, there was only one that was sort of still lingering in there. The 11 clients, I think, when we had our celebration for these young people that were doing the traineeship in community, that 5 or 6 of those young people were actually in that group of people that were actually doing traineeships in community, and that the getting them out of that social environment that they were in, getting them to be responsible for themselves, and also identifying where they are and how they got there, and not blaming it on themselves, and identifying with their parents and the family and the homes that they lived in, as to where they needed to put themselves. Doing that would actually strengthen all parties involved: parents, children, youth offenders, and the extended family environment.
Dicky, I'm going to come to you in one moment. Annalise, can I just follow up on this? It's very important, because you talk about negative indicators, or prior negative indicators. Is that something that emerges out of a cultural entropy study? And furthermore, I'm hearing from Angela that there's a real intergenerational equality created here, which is very powerful, isn't it? Those 2 points for your response.
I just would like to look at this a little more holistically, if I may, David. There's been billions and billions of dollars that have been poured into infrastructure and services into Indigenous communities. Many of those infrastructure, many of those services have been directed towards the negative social indicators in communities to solve drug abuse, to solve domestic violence, to solve a number of different social issues. What whole of community change does, and what this whole philosophy has done, is we haven't ignored that those issues exist, but we've chosen to look at community from a different lens. So rather than focus all of our energy into the deficiencies of communities, whole of community change is about focusing on economic development and the spiritual growth of the people. So as infrastructure starts to grow in the community, we also grow the spiritual awareness of the people, so that there is the will, the desire, the capacity building, the energy, the drive to jump in and actually fill the roles that are coming up inside the community. Now, it's really important to note this, because what that does is it builds the social capital of the community. And as it does that, the community themselves feel empowered, and they start to create their own services, their own infrastructure. Therefore, coming back to a point that I made earlier, let's transition services such as, home maintenance is one example, but there are so many others back into the community. So we can look at a whole lot of topics, including youth offenders, where in between that middle point of youth offenders and actually going to jail, that there's that midpoint where youth are taken back to country, as an example, back to traditional land, that they reconnect with the elders, they reconnect with the law of their country, with remembering, who am I, what am I here for? So rebuilding that spiritual awareness.
Completely understood, and it's all about funding a holistic world picture, and I certainly fully appreciate that social capital, the way you talk to that. Let me turn to Dicky. In this growth, in this holistic growth, in particular in this spiritual growth, which is very close to your heart in that community, how do you see this? What are your responses to the statements that you're hearing as applied in your everyday working and living?
The positive nature of these conversations have originated from the negative. We've looked at the negative and we've turned it into positive, and we are here because of the negatives. There will always be negative, but we learn from them things. And if you look at a battery, it has a positive and a negative pole. In order for it to give life to something, to a machinery or to a car, it must, negative and positive must have contact. And looking at the process of this whole of community change, if you look at a dirty cup of water and you pour clean water into it, eventually all the dirt will come out and it'll be clean. And this clean water is symbolic of our positive attitude, our determination, the counsel that we give to the young kids, the counsel that we give to the parents, the understanding of what's happening, what needs to happen. As we keep pouring this wisdom and understanding into a person who wants to listen, who wants to change, it will benefit them and they will be brought to light. And when one thing I notice about people in the community, if I mention that what Angela said earlier on, that there's a blanket over the community, and as I see that blanket is like a fear that has confined and restricted our people, has kept them in that comfort zone, the fear of inadequacy, that we're not smart or whatever the case may be. But once we step out of that comfort zone and overcome that fear and step out, that's where the true learning and that's where the growth begins, is outside that comfort zone. Yes, like I said before, there must be a balance between the two, and as we overcome fear, we get more confident. But fear is always a good thing too, because it keeps you cautious, and when you approach situations, but our confidence, if there's too much fear, then we go into a shell and hide ourselves. But if there's too much confidence, it becomes pride and arrogance. There must be a balance between the two. And this is one thing that I see with our people, is that the fear of them being inadequate. And then once they begin to understand that they are smart people, and you see it in the homes when they move in, you see the gardens and the grass becomes green and the house becomes beautiful. They expressing themselves from the inside, and everything external is just an expression of what's happening on the inside of the person.
Maryann Coconut, thank you so much, Dicky. Maryann Coconut, Dicky was very, very eloquent there, talking to the balance between dark and light without either. It's not a balanced universe. The Creator gives us dark to overcome the light and light to overcome the dark. Annalise had talked about giving and re-giving, lots of terms to apply here. But Dicky was very eloquent in that about the balance, using the car battery as an example here. Your thoughts, Maryann, as you listen to your colleagues there?
Well, to me, I see a picture of the sun shining all the time. And sometimes it's a dull day and you can't see the sun, but it's always shining behind the clouds. And as the clouds go away, you'll see the ray of the sunshine. And I believe that's what it is in our community, that always look at the bright side, but attack those problems and resolve them, because there'll always be the sun shining there behind the clouds. And in our community, as we look together, we look at a holistic model for the community, that we can give each other this energy and build our lives together. And so the kids can see what the parents are doing, so we'll pass it on to them. Like even with our seasons here up in the Cape, there's the wet season and the dry season. When the dry season comes, everything goes brown because fire goes through. But when the rainy season comes back, everything comes alive. Flowers, green grass, beautiful rivers flowing, and birds singing. So that's the picture that we see in our community. It's alive with singing and dancing because of the spirituality that is moving through the community with a ripple effect.
Thank you, Maryann. A wonderful way to describe our creatives' gifts for sure. We have 2 areas left, and we're now in this area of celebration in the program. We've taken this journey. The 2 areas that we are going to expand upon, I'm sure, in future programs, beginning with the healing program, Women of Worth. I'd like to immediately talk to Angela about experiences in this program. This is one of the modules or the components of Annalise's programs. Could you talk to me about that, Angela? What occurs in this model, in this idea for women? What does it tell women about their divine position in this universe?
Well, the Women of Worth program was exactly how it's spelled, wow, because the group of women that went down, to me, my point of view is what happened was that they captured themselves. It was very emotional for them. They were able to release a lot of hidden things that were there. They were able to bring out around the campfire. In a group, there was a lot of emotions. People that didn't know that they could do what they could do was incredible, like scaling down a 5-meter cliff, abseiling was absolutely adventurous. And these women that took that challenge just to put a harness on was just like, no, that's not me. But yes, I did it. And it was raining, and even though the weather seemed like it was so gloom and doom, we actually, the ladies just shone through those dark clouds that was there, and we made it down to dinner, and they talked and they cried and they laughed, and they all had a vision that they didn't even realize that they had. And when we came back, a lot of the ladies came up to me and said, where do we go to from here? How are we going to get this? We want that. How are we going to do it? And I said, you need to find it in yourself. You've identified what you want, and there's a certain stepping stone that you need to take, and only you can do it for yourself. And building that self-esteem, that self-worth, and that spiritual part of them that they was able to bring out of them in that program got them the next step to where they were going. And there's a lot of those ladies there that are prominent leaders in this community today. And I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to be a part of that. And like we always look at some of the dark sides of our lives, but we also actually were able to look at the positive things in our life and move forward, and we didn't want to go back to where we were. We wanted to move forward, and that was something that these ladies needed, just to give them that push and that little bit of a shove. And it's incredible to who they are today, and I'm so proud to be working and walking alongside them.
Let me turn to you, Dicky, a response to that, if you may. You had talked about your love and role in building the community, building houses, and then to be able to go home and sit down and be there with your family and your wife. How do you look at the Women of Worth program? This must have a great connectivity in what you were talking about earlier.
As much as she understands my role, I must understand hers too. Look after her as well. So when I go home, I knowing that she's been there all day dealing with the kids, and they're only young, and we have one 9-year-old. But the two young ones, they're very demanding as kids, and to be there all day listening to these kids go on about their day, crying, being demanding, and running amok. You go home and you sort of want to just take that responsibility off her and help her a bit, so that she can rest and relax a bit. And like I talked about balance there, you must have that balance between the father and mother roles in a family, that you share the load. A woman is a person also, and they have feelings, they have emotions, and just as the man as well, but you got to listen to each other. That's what I find is very important in a relationship, is to listen. You don't have to speak, just listen, and you'll get the right words to say, whether it's to bring comfort or to bring rest to unrest or relieve some frustration. Wow, women of worth. They must be valued.
Thank you, Dicky, for that. Yeah, listening indeed, and the art of understanding feedback, hugely important. And Maryann, may I ask you, we will expand upon this in future programs, because it's an amazing part of Annalise's models that she creates here. But this is incredibly important, and in past programs in 2013, I actually had a long-term series about the divine feminine, that importance, that archetypal knowledge that the feminine has, that we're not just talking about in the body, but universally. Your thoughts to this, and the understanding, the comprehension, the learning that we get from this particular program that you have, the Women of Worth?
I believe there's always a balance in people's lives, where you have a choice in your life. So there's the balance of looking at spirituality and physical needs. And I believe that spirituality is from the inside, the soul of your body. It flows through your body and goes to your heart. That you will work with others in your community, and you will have the passion in your heart to be there in your community for your people, your family. Sometimes with families, unfortunately, that one partner leaves the family and the struggle is on your shoulders. And I believe that was with me when I became a mother and father to my children. And I struggled and I worked hard. I didn't complain, because I love my children and I love my community, and that it came from my heart because I had the passion in my heart. I worked with other people's children in the community voluntarily, and I believe that's what it is. When you balance your life with spirituality and physical needs.
Maryann, you touched my heart there. And let's go to Men of Worth. We turn back to you, Dicky, and then after these two have been discussed, look for the conclusion from Annalise. Dicky, you've been involved in Men of Worth. What did that mean to you? What did you learn from that, and what could you take that back into the wider view of human family values and the cohesion that you have in your community?
That was a very much needed program for the men to participate in. One thing that really stood out for me is when Peter, who delivered the course, he drew a picture on the whiteboard, and it had an iceberg that was floating in water. The icebergs float in the water. Probably about 10% of the iceberg is above the surface and 90% of it is below the surface. Then he took that and said, look at that as you, as a person, that's you. On top is how you appear on the outside, and below the surface is what's on the inside. That stood out for me because that I believe that if we can look on the inside and fix up all the things that we need to fix up on the inside, it will display on the outside. As myself, that's what I continue to do with myself, is examine myself on the inside and not look at the outside as the whole world tends to easily just point the blame, look at this person, look at that person, but when the problem is on the inside, we should focus on ourselves. I put it this way one time, just thinking to myself that if we judge others and focus on their faults, it's because we're not willing to deal with our own. And that's one thing that I liked about that Men of Worth, and also just the whole men gathering and sharing their testimonies of their life story and their struggles, and share the positive, where they want to go. And it became pretty intense, where few of the men were crying and as they were speaking, and it is very touching to hear all these men pour themselves out and realize where they went wrong, and then it's just going forward from here. And also, let's just to identify and give understanding to the men how we function, how we react to situations when we're under stress or even under joy, how we react. It's just beneficial, and I even told Annalise that it would be good to have another session like that again for the men, and hopefully the same faces turn up and more men again turn up. But since then, the men have taken into account all that the course delivered and what we were taught there. It was really beneficial to me myself, and especially that iceberg diagram where that below the surface is what really the problem or what matters. And out of the abundance of the heart a man speaks. That's when once again the listening comes. When you listen to a person, they're speaking out of their heart, whether they're angry or joyful or they have something bothering them, they speak out of their heart. And when you listen, you can hear that.
Your analogy of the iceberg is absolutely beautiful. It's the real seeing of the universe and the creator behind it, and certainly talking about us not just being the observer, but also having the art of being the observed as well. Let me just ask for a very brief response from Angela on that. Your brief thoughts to Dicky's statement.
Absolutely right in what he's saying. I've been a person that was always dwelling in the past and trying to carry myself through. And through the WOW program, I sat back and wondered why people wanted to move on from it when you've got to stand behind what you present. But what happened out of the Women of Worth program is that I was able to leave it all behind and move forward, and I was a better person. And we all know that we've got to clean our own backyards before we can give any advice to anyone else, and that was a very, very big turning point back there, that you can never try and encourage or give any advice to anyone if you can't stand behind what you believe in, and if you keep holding yourself back in the past. And I wondered why we weren't going back there when we were doing the program. It took me a chance to actually understand, well, if we're going to keep a step back and dealing with it back there, we're never going to be able to move on. And it was just a very empowering program that has actually put me 10 miles ahead of myself, and I'm still moving forward.
Maryann, your brief response to this. How absolutely wonderful to listen to these two programs. Are we not all traveling through these days today of finding the entire universe within ourselves? Your thoughts, Maryann, if you would.
Well, I believe that with this journey, it is an endless journey. It's a time to move forward. It's the time to go up the mountain and reach for the stars. It's a time to hold our hands together, to reach up and feel that our Creator Spirit is with us, with this movement in our community. Because looking around the community, we see the creation of the Creator around us and with the people themselves, that we see the hands of this Creator Spirit that is our great Creator that is around us and within us.
Annalise, much to celebrate here. Your thoughts and the celebration that's coming out of these two programs that we are talking about that have been introduced here.
Well, there's a beautiful quote that I love, and it's, "When I shift the inside, the outside happens." And I'm seeing a true manifestation of that in the testimonies of everybody here today. Throughout life's journey, there are times when we must go where we've never gone before, and we only have our inner resources to guide us. And so Women of Worth and Men of Worth is very much about exploring the rhythm of time, the voice of God, understanding the answers to those burning questions of what is my purpose, why am I here, who am I, how to manage ourselves with grace. It teaches us the formula for true creativity, how to manage ourselves, and understanding the balance of love and law. And so it's a very unique experience where we come together as men, we come together as women, and we have a very personal experience and journey of self-discovery and healing.
We are approaching the end of the program swiftly. Let me turn back, if I may, Maryann Coconut. Can you give me a brief expression, your thoughts, your pleasure at seeing the War Memorial being constructed at Napranum? What were your thoughts? How did you see that marvelous event take place?
The day of the opening, it was so wonderful to see all the people in the community, all the people from Weeper community and Napranum community coming together, remembering our men that have gone out of the community, the Second World War, that they were brave and courageous to face the war, to fight for their country. And it's a great pleasure to see the memorial there, because most of the time our children see marches in the TV in communities throughout Australia, in big cities, and they probably don't know the history of what happened in our community. That was our purpose, to have that war memorial, so that our children can see the names, so that they can know that our men did something for our country too, with the wider Australians.
Return to you, Annalise. The War Memorial, a wonderful purpose. And next time, of course, we'll talk about the Civic Centre as the news item, where Dicky perhaps will come back once again to talk about that as to the construction. Your thoughts, Annalise, to the War Memorial and to the Civic Centre that we will, the latter of which we'll talk about next time?
Both are wonderful examples that, if Napranum has proved anything, it's that you have to work with the individual community to create its own plan, to create real change. It has to be the community's choice. And so be it the War Memorial, the Civic Centre, the supermarket, so many examples that have been brought up around the table here today. It's all about community choice, and it's that shift away from intervention, paternalism, to true community ownership and self-determination.
Thank you, Annalise. Let me go to final statements for the day. Our celebration of the program, we have essentially focused on family values, respect, discipline, cohesion in the community, and above everything else, love. Let me start with yourself, if I may, Annalise. Your final thoughts as to where we've taken the journey.
Well, I believe that change is the basis of our existence, and we have to be able to adapt and to be flexible in our minds and in our hearts. That reconnection to the Creator, that reconnection to that fire spirit that exists within all of us. I believe that's the ripple effect that takes us to the next stage.
And Dicky, what a pleasure it has been to listen to you today. I hope so much that you'll return to us. Your final thoughts for our journey.
As a new child is brought into the world, parents are the first teachers. Their responsibility is to grow that child. And from listening to whenever I think of elders, whenever I listen to elders, I think of the strong discipline they have, and that we must carry through with that discipline with our kids, because the discipline establishes discernment. It establishes the ability for the kid to discern between right and wrong. And if there's a lack of that, then the kid will have to think for themselves, without guidance, without protection. And when the mother and father agree and want the same thing, that they desire the same values, and it brings a oneness to the family, peace, a contentment, a happiness. It all starts at the home. If there's order in the home, then there's order with the children, and then they understand discipline. They'll stray, but that discipline will always be there.
Angela, thank you, Dicky. Let me turn to Angela. Angela, your final thoughts for the journey.
Change is very, very important, and I'll just share quickly. I took a young girl, she was about 7 years old, to Uluru to do the Deadly Fun Run with Rob Di Costello. And our journey from Cairns, or from Napranum to Cairns, and then Cairns to Uluru, she was in a very big jet with only about 9 people in it. And when the air hostess came up to us and asked us what we were doing, and the young people took 4 of them over, and the young girl was very, very happy to see her, but she was very confused because she said to her, "Miss, why are you white up there and black down there?" She looked her up and down, and this to me is that if we don't teach our children that there's a bigger world out there to where you live here in community, it's going to be very hard for them to adapt, because she didn't know why this lady was white on the top and black on the bottom. And what happened was the air hostess had to take her in the back of the plane to show her that she had stockings. So when we got touchdown, I had to go to the shop in Uluru and buy some stockings so that she could put them on and feel them on her leg. And that was something that now she lives in Mariba, and her mum was one of those ladies that were able to build a self-esteem, a self-confidence, and is living as a single mum. And this young girl is now in another environment where she's able to adapt very well and thrive in her schooling and in her careers to what she wants to do, her dancing and stuff like that. So this is why community change is very, very important to building people's capacity and self-worth, self-esteem, confidence, and looking forward to a future once they realise that they can actually be who they want to be, put their mind to it.
Maryann Coconut, what a wonderful program we have had today. Pleasure to hear the statements and experiences. And Angela had earlier in the program mentioned the campfire, and I feel today as if I have sat around a campfire with you all, and certainly in my life have enjoyed some of my greatest experiences around the campfire, being very close to our Creator. Your final thoughts for the day?
With the campfire and the fire is where it draws the people together, and that's where you feel the warmness of the fire as it glows. And that's how it is, that when you have this love in your heart, you have that warmness in your heart, just like the fire burning, and we believe that every day we'll keep the fire burning and do what this dynamic change has done to our community.
Maryann, thank you. And that does complete our wonderful journey today. I shall start with yourself, Angela, Louis. Angela, what a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to have you here today. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
And to Dicky Namai, Dicky, again, a great pleasure. Thank you so much to yourself.
Thank you.
And to Annalise Jennings, Annalise, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, David. It's been a privilege once again.
And to Maryann Coconut, Maryann, you are lovely. Thank you so very much for being here once again.
Thank you so much. Even hearing your voice, and within me I feel, even at this time, if we want some healing from our universal Father, from the university, but this is the time that we can touch each other and send the healing, no matter how far we are from each other, that now there's no barriers to keep the healing away from us, no matter what color we have, that we have this love and the warmth in the heart from this fire that is burning. Thank you.
Maryann, thank you. And to our listeners today, this was episode 3 in the long-term series of Whole of Community Change from Napranum Indigenous Community in Queensland, Australia. And the participants today, Annalise Jennings, Maryann Coconut, Dicky Namai and Angela Louis. I do hope that you have enjoyed this program as much as we. You can gain information on this and any other program in the series at the official website, davidgibbons.org, or for international facilitated panels, crossingoverthebridge.com. Meanwhile, wherever you are in this world, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.